I'm going to attempt to survive the next 300 days in Elden Ring to defeat the final boss and become the Elden Lord. And if I couldn't defeat the Golden Order within the given days, all of my old videos will be deleted forever. But before that, we're almost at 500 subscribers. So if you could even consider subscribing, it means a ton. To celebrate my victory, I stood in the highest point of the tallest mountain and got attacked by these stupid bats. And I also tried to pick a fight with a turtle. Continuing my journey, I came across the front gate ruins and I made it my mission to kill every single one of these pesky soldiers. And I made it my mission to run away as far as I could. And behold, I found the side of grace, in which I was greeted by a random lady who handed me a donkey. What in the holy mother of Eddie Murphy is this? After a long rest, I finally entered the storm gate, and oh my god, what in the holy Bible is this freak? At this point, my balls were sweaty, knees weak, arms so heavy, there was piss on my pants already, Margaret's confetti, I'm nervous, but on the surface I'm screaming already. With the help of donkey, I was able to escape, but not for too long, because I got jumped by the wolves. On day 4, I found another lady in red who gave me spirit summoning. What's with these ladies and handing me stuff? Do I look that miserable? Well, I guess. I continued my run until I reached the Storm Hill gate and I got jumped by 4 pesky soldiers again. On day 5, after a long trail of death, to my surprise, I walked right into the enemy territory and behold, the great Margaret the Fell. But the alpha giga chat that I was, I stood my ground and faced Margaret while my crown jewels were drenched in sweat. As Margaret was making his first move, at that moment, I thought of the only thing I could do to win this fight. I rolled and rolled and rolled off the cliff. But you know what? Second time is a charm. Maybe if I give it another try. At this point, I could not take more of Margaret's punishments. My mental endurance was at its limit. So I gave up screaming and started running for my life as far as I could to escape this hellhole. Everywhere I went was a punishment until I reached the side of grace. And by the grace of Eddie Murphy, the donkey lady came to me and offered me something that I could not refuse. The permission to see Lady Fia. And let's just say, it has been a long day. As soon as I saw Lady Fia, my legs turned into jelly. I fall into her arms, crying while she consoled me like a baby. And after a long day of rest in the arms of our gal Fia, I was ready to face the world again. And I got jumped by the wolves. Twice actually. And oh, it's day 9 by the way. I was running for my life as usual until I came across this giant golem laying on the ground. I thought to myself, this is cool, until it got up and started chasing me. So in this intense chase sequence, I came across this gate and I went inside knowing that the golem wouldn't be able to fit in. But I couldn't even imagine what was waiting for me inside. This was actually a dungeon, and these dungeons are ran by stone goblins. And let me just tell you something. You don't want to mess with stone goblins, and you definitely don't want to cross path with stone goblins. But most importantly, you don't want to fight with stone goblins because they are lizards with knife but on crack. So you can imagine the type of damage they can do on a person mentally. I somehow opened the gate and went inside. At this point, I knew there was something waiting for me behind that door, but I wasn't ready. Behold, the Adri Burial Watchdog. Okay, I don't know how to describe this one. I mean, first of all, why is this dog looking thing so fast? I tried to fight it, trust me, but the best I could do was die. So I gave up quickly and I got out of the dungeon in anger. At this point, I hadn't seen light in days. My disappointment led me to pick a fight with anything that could move. This included a bunch of crackheads, monkeys, horse riders, monkeys fighting pesky soldiers, and the bloodhound Nightcrawler. Did I tell you I lost all of it? At this point, I was so pathetic that even the rolling goats were dodging my attacks left and right. But my search for strength and finding General Radon still continued, and I came across the Santa merchant on the 14th day of my journey in the Church of Ella. The merchant offered, but I had no money to buy anything, so I climbed another highest peak of the tallest mountain to contemplate on what did I do wrong. Soon I realized that I didn't know how to level up my stats or weapons. So I did a bit of research and found out that more runes equals more power. I was excited and I literally typed in how to get more runes, and I was dumbfounded when I realized that every enemy drops a certain amount of runes. But how come I didn't have any runes up until this point? Then I found out that every time I died, I dropped all my runes and I had to collect them back if I wanted to level up. Now I feel like I was one step closer to my goal. I also went on a hunt for monkeys because they were the easiest one to kill. Now it was time to find a site of grace to level up, and on my way to the Church of Makera, I came across that big freak again, and apparently they're called trolls. Here I thought they would be called something much cooler, like I don't know, sword giants or something? Anyways, riding through the Midwood forest, I came across a few bears. One of them started chasing me, and I panicked to get away, but my stupid donkey disappeared. Now I was all by myself, and as I turned around, I saw the mama bear. My heart sank into the ground. I thought I would be done for, but the mama bear was too busy scratching the tree, and somehow I made it out of the forest alive. On day 17, I finally came across the two trolls dragging the wagon. It was a sight to behold, but it makes you wonder who would do such a thing. I mean, even I didn't have the courage to face the trolls, and to think that there was someone even bigger and stronger roaming these lands terrified me. At this point, I was strong enough to finally visit all the previous sites to assert my dominance on every single thing that moved. So I took my revenge on the wolves, and I hunted a few bears until the mama bear showed up, and you know. And I also got slayed by the troll. On day 20, I finally found the tutorial section of the game, and I felt stupid going through it. I mean, where was it when I needed it? And the soldier of Gothic was embarrassingly weak. I feel bad fighting him. He only landed 2 shots, and that's because I was too eager to kill him instead of blocking his attacks. Not gonna lie though, this battle tickled my ego enough to challenge the 3 sentinel, and he just one-shotted me into non-existence. Going back to the Church of LA, I had a surprise visit from the lady, Ronnie the witch. She told me that she was the previous owner of the donkey, and that I should take care of the donkey. And just now, I realized the donkey is called Torrent. Wait, what? My search for power led me to one of the dungeons, and I saw the coolest boss ever. Behold, the Black Knife Assassin. Too bad though, cause I whooped his ass without breaking a sweat. Before crossing the Saints Bridge, I found Alexander the Jar, who was stuck in the ground and wanted my help. I was hesitant to help him because what if he attacks me? But thankfully, he was nice, and he also gave me a piece of meat. Though I cannot say the same for the Mad Pumpkinhead. He was viciously violent, and I had to put him in check. In order to assert my dominance, I continued my journey to the land of the living dead. Riding on the highs of the past victories, I was too blinded and I got jumped by the skeleton. So after taking care of them, I leveled up my stats, and I finally met the daddy skeleton, who was riding his boat in the summoning water village. Okay, so here's the deal. At this moment, I had conflicting thoughts because I wasn't strong enough to end the battle quickly, but I wasn't that weak to just give up. So this was my longest battle yet, because the daddy skeleton would summon his children, and when the odds were against him, he would just disappear. He wasn't anything to write home about, but he was playing dirty with his tricks. At this point, I was so pissed that I turned off my screen recording just to focus on the battle. And yes, I was finally able to beat him off screen. Okay, so after this battle, everything changed when I crossed the border to the land of Caled. I was literally walking on clouds with the amount of ego I pumped into my head, and I thought I could just walk in the land without any consequences. And oh boy, I was wrong. This land was a living hell, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. The first creature I encountered killed me on the spot, but it wasn't until I crossed the firewall I saw things that would haunt me for days. There were walking deads in groups trying to cross the bridge to the other side. There were crows the size of mountains, I mean literally, and these giant dogs acting like T-Rex. I had no chance of survival, so the first opportunity I got, I traveled back to the Lime Grave and contemplated on my journey to the living hell. I realized that this world was much more terrifying than I anticipated, and I knew I had to get stronger if I wanted to survive this world. So I started training intensively for a few days, or more like collecting runes, and the best way to collect runes was to invade the Cadence camp. They were prideful warriors with a very aggressive fighting style, too quick on their feet I must say, and if I didn't block on time, they would just send me flying. These Cadence were much more skilled compared to those other clumsy soldiers, so I had to revisit the camp many times to gather enough runes to level up. Once I gathered enough runes, I increased my stats to focus on power and health while ignoring everything else, and this came back to haunt me later on, but for now, I was finally strong enough to stand my ground. On day 27 of my survival journey, I was ready to face the troll, and I defeated him fair and square. And to celebrate my victory, I tracked down the 2 other trolls dragging the wagon, and I nailed them to the ground. Like literally. To say my ego was bursting out of my skull was an understatement. So the first thing I wanted to do was to track down the tree sentinel and show him who's the Giga Chad. But goddamn, this guy was brutal. He was so heavy yet so fast, and his hit and run technique was very precise. So it took me a couple of tries to learn his movements and sync my attacks accordingly. But once I pushed him between the rocks and the fallen castle, it restricted his movements severely, and I took the chance to finally defeat him. He was a formidable opponent, and now I thought I could do the same to the dragon in the swamps of Limegrave, and it didn't go according to the plan. But there was one more enemy that I wanted to get my hands on ever since we first met, the man who pushed me to insanity, and now it was my turn to pay it back. This time I had my spirits and the co-operator to help me defeat him. Margaret had such a unique character design, he was oozing with style. As far as fighting technique, he was a close range attacker using his cane, golden sword and hammer, and he also had some decent long range attacks. He was very precise with his movements and went to attack for maximum damage, but he had a lot of openings once he was occupied. I feel like the tree sentinel was better at defense because of its constant movement and hit and run technique. It is just my opinion, but I think the sentinel was a technical fighter while Margaret is an emotional fighter. The fight with Margaret was really interesting, but I kind of feel like we overpowered him and he didn't know how to handle all 4 of us at once, and I think I could have defeated him by myself without the help of others. Overall, I was kind of disappointed with the battle. I think I overtrained for this fight and it didn't feel like a struggle. On day 34, I finally crossed the Bridge of Sacrifices, and I was greeted by the spelling magic enemy. I had never seen them before, so after dealing with them, I tried to make my way to the castle. And there, I saw a giant arrow coming towards me. I was stunned, so I quickly ran to the castle, but suddenly I saw a giant arrow man standing and waiting for me. I tried to be sneaky, but he saw me, so I had to face him. But he got dropped quickly with only 2 hits. Back in the castle, I made my way to the top, and there I saw the most horrifying thing ever. A group of misbegottens was celebrating their victory over the dead pile of burning soldiers. Safe to say, I slaughtered every single one of them for their evil massacre. And then I ascended even further, so you can imagine how tall this castle was. I went so high just to climb back down to the beach. There I met some jellyfish, and by this point I knew I was facing an enemy. It was the most disappointing battle ever, and the enemy was very average in design, movement and fighting style. This was the easiest thing ever, and I didn't even break a sweat defeating the boss. Now I was traveling to the Church of Pilgrimage, and there I came across the most insane creature ever. Behold, the walking mausoleum, or as I call it, the ringing castle. I didn't know what to expect, whether this is a foe or an enemy. As I went up close, I saw these white stones attached to its feet, so I started breaking them, and suddenly the castle started to collapse. But I was able to get out quickly before it falls apart. And as I turned around, to my surprise, the castle just landed on the ground, but there was nothing in it except for a dead body. So I left the castle in disappointment and made my way to the Minor Idri Weeping Peninsula. Jeez, that was a mouthful. There I saw another boss. Behold, the Minor Idri. This was a very weird creature holding a Japanese instrument called samisen, and I couldn't tell the front from its back. He was very slow and clumsy, but soon I ended his music career for good. On day 46 of my survival journey, I finally conquered most of the south part of the Elden Ring map. This included Limegrave and the Weeping Peninsula. Now it was time to go up north towards the Leonia of the Lakes, but I had one stop in the Church of Irid to level up with all the runes I collected. By this point, I had realized that ignoring my endurance and stamina was a stupid idea, so I made sure that I increased my stamina enough to keep up with my strength. And as I reached the cliff of the Leonia of the Lakes, I stood there to admire the landscape. It was truly beautiful. While exploring the north, I came across a few enemy types, but nothing out of the order, so I invaded the Purified Ruins camp, and I also tried to pick a fight with a giant lobster and a giant crab, and I failed miserably in both instances. Making my way to the Gate Town's bridge, I was was suddenly attacked by the mama bear, and oh boy, let's just say it was that time of the month again. Because she was barbarously brutal, I noticed that she was very quick for his size. But once I got under her, she was useless, and she couldn't attack me until she moved. But I put her out of her misery quickly. And I also found another daddy skeleton sailing its ship, and I put him out of his misery too. While crossing over the canyon, I came across the coolest enemies ever, the fire monks. I thought I was in for a show tonight, son, but after killing the daddy monk, I realized how far I have come in regards to my strength, because they stood no chance against me. Further in the distance, I saw a vehicle patrolling the land. Soon, I found out that it was a fire chariot. This has to be the most unique thing I have seen in Elden Ring, and to my surprise, it wasn't actually a living being, but rather it was operated by a pilot sitting in the back. So after dealing with this one, as I turned around, I saw another giant golem holding an axe. I already knew who my next target was in this conquest of asserting my dominance. But this golem was different from before, because even though it had a lot of openings because of its size, it still knew how to keep me away from its legs. But you know what? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. I went inside the castle to descend into the underground for the first time. It was the deepest I have ever been, and let's just say I wasn't too keen to explore after seeing these giant ants. I made my way through the tunnels and onto the bridge just to descend even further in the underground. There I was greeted by the Clayman and this horrifying creature called Malformed Star. Honestly, I was waiting for it to come down any minute, but it just hung in there and started throwing rocks at me. Soon my disappointment was immeasurable, so I did what any smart individual would do. I started shooting arrows at it, and the worst part, I didn't even get a drop, so I wasted about 2 hours for nothing. But soon my patience was rewarded when I came face to face with the dragon soldier of Nocastella. The creature design was captivating, a mummified human body with a dragon head. But I didn't get why he was dragging his body instead of just standing. This was by far the biggest enemy I had faced, but he was very slow in speed and movement because of its size. Even dragging his arms was nothing to write home about. He also had the same weak point as the mama bear. As long as I was under him, he could not attack me until he moved backwards. So for the first half of the battle, the odds were on my favor, until it started charging electricity out of its body and pulled out wings out of its back, and he jumped while shooting electricity at me Zeus style. Now things just got more interesting. Suddenly he was faster, his attacks were much more precise, and he could dodge my attacks now by flying away. It took me a few tries to figure him out, but remember when I told you about his weak point? Apparently if you get way too close to his body, specifically near his legs, he won't be able to attack you, and if he doesn't attack you, he won't be able to transform into Zeus, which was weird. I don't know if I broke the game or confused the shit out of this creature, but he never transformed, so I took that chance to finish him off for good. Even still, the star of this show was this giant man sitting on his throne. This underground section of the game was one in a lifetime experience, and it made me realize how small I actually was compared to the rest of the world. On day 58, I came across this giant turtle in the Church of Vows. He was a gentle giant and he was asking me about the origins of this church, but I had no idea what he was talking about. Okay, so at this point I had realized how strong I actually was. Through my journey in the Leonia of the Lakes, I felt like I was the bully because I shifted the whole paradigm in the land and there was no one to challenge me. But there was one creature that I always wanted to fight ever since I defeated Margaret, the flying dragon Akil. So I traveled back to the land of Limegrave and challenged the Crucible Knight before paying a visit to Our Lady Dragon. The Crucible Knight was a very prideful and confident warrior. You could feel his strength just by him walking towards you. Every impact had a purpose and every move had a destination. He was very angelic with his shining wings and golden sparkles. He was very quick on his feet too. Remember when I told you how strong I had become? Not here though, because I struggled hard. But I wasn't angry or frustrated because I knew how strong I was after defeating the great enemy in the underground. And for this warrior to hold his own against me was very commendable. I admired his confidence and technicality during the fight. Even after defeating him, I still had a lot of respect for the Crucible Knight. Anyways, back to the dragon. Yup, the great enemy fleeted. Honestly, this was embarrassing for the dragon. I had never fought a more pathetic creature before, and they had the audacity to call it a great enemy, more like a pathetic reptile. The Crucible Knight was much more menacing. On day 65, I made my way to the land of Caria Manor, where I met a sensible troll called E.G., who was actually a blacksmith. Would you look at that? I thought all trolls were just angry, senseless creatures. So after talking with him and upgrading my weapons, now it was time to visit the Caria Manor. As I was getting close, I was showered with blue lighting arrows, so I had to quickly get inside the castle. As I entered the gate, I was attacked by a giant hand with 10 fingers. Yes, a freaking giant hand just slapped me. It was the creepiest living thing I had ever came across. So on my second try, I quickly made my way to the stairs and into the castle. From there, I made my way to the top of the castle, where I faced another troll, but this time it was a night troll. Like, how many variants of them are there? Ascending up the stairs again, I came across this round chair conference room, and suddenly the Royal Knight Loretta appeared. At first, I thought this was just another boss fight, but soon I realized that this was actually a great enemy, because the Royal Knight was no different from others. It had a very similar fighting style as the Tree Sentinel, but with magic arrows, and this was my quickest battle ever. At this point, I didn't know what was happening to me. Why am I so strong all of a sudden? I think I overestimated this world and trained harder than I should have, because the only real challenge I faced so far was the Tree Sentinel, Margaret, and the Crucible Knight. But soon I would be challenged like I have never been challenged before, but for now we move. So after defeating the Royal Knight, I made my way to the land of Misty Blue. There I saw a dragon wandering around, and I knew I had to kill it. But during our fight, it just disappeared. So I went to one of the watchtowers, and there I saw Ronnie the Witch again. Apparently there was a quest line that I had to complete, but I never got the chance to do it. But I met her royal soldiers. I saw E.G. again, and apparently he was one of the war counselors. I also met Bladed, and I must say he was one of the coolest characters in the entire game. I also met Sorceress Celavis, and at this point I had to carry on with my journey to find General Radon. And I thought I would never see these characters again, but I was wrong. On day 73, I finally decided to go back to the Limegrave in order to cross the border to the land of Khalid, because at this point I thought I was strong enough to endure the punishment of that land. But oh boy, I was in for a show tonight, son. After reaching the Limegrave, I visited the Table of Lost Grace for a final stats and weapon upgrades. Then I fast traveled straight to the Kalium Ruins, the mainland of Khalid. By this point, I had enough experience in combat and finding my paths. To say this land was living in an entirely different dimension is an understatement. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, this land had lost its sense of organized structure and enemy levels. The land did not respect my presence nor how strong I was. If I was to lose my mind traveling this land, there was no sense of direction or comfort. It seemed like the land was just there to torture me in every corner. It didn't make any sense because every enemy I faced was as strong as they were before, whether it was the giant crow or the dog-looking T-Rex. The music was dreadful and the atmosphere was suffocating, and there were these poisonous mushrooms everywhere. Though I was able to hold my own because of how far I had came in regards to surviving this world. So I traveled from the Kalium Ruins to the Celia town of sorcery. The path was just dreadful, and there wasn't much excitement except for just trying to stay alive. From there I made my way to the Cathedral of Dragon Communion, and I came across this decaying Ixyx dragon. At first it seemed just like any other dragon, but I was wrong. It took me 3 hours to kill this dragon even at level 85, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I learned the dragon's movement and fighting techniques quickly, but there was this one thing that I could not avoid, the Scarlet Root. If you had noticed, I was a close combat fighter. I would get right close to an enemy to kill it, and I didn't have any magic or long distance attacks to help me, and that was my downfall. Once the dragon released its Scarlet Root, there was no way for me to avoid it, but it wasn't just any poison. Once it touched me, I wasn't able to move until the smoke went away. I was dreading this battle, but because of my ego, I couldn't just let it go. So I turned off my screen recording and focused on killing this dragon. And after 3 hours, I was finally able to kill the dragon, but I don't have any footage to show you except for this short clip. From there, I traveled to the Redmond Castle by crossing the bridge, and with the use of this teleportation, I was finally inside the castle. There, I was greeted by these 2 guardian lions. They were horrifying creatures, but I was so numb because of the battle with the dragon that I didn't care, and I jumped right into the ring with them. But to my surprise, they were really stupid. They couldn't stop attacking each other accidentally. perfectly. So I took that chance to use one against the other. I did this by bringing them both to a tight corner and stood right in front of them. They would attack simultaneously, and hence one would attack me while the other one would attack his own partner. And this is how I got one of the lions killed, and now I only had to worry about one of them. So after dealing with these creatures, I went to the main gate, and there I was greeted by every single NPC that I saved or I met throughout my journey. As I ran up the stairs towards the eccentric set, he asked if I was ready. The music, the atmosphere, everything. It was truly an out-of-body experience. As the cutscene began, I jumped off my seat because, mind you, by this point I didn't know who I was gonna face. And lo and behold, it was General Radon. And as the set shouted,
"O gathering of champions, the revels begin! The celebration of war!"
I had shivers down my spine, and I was ready to finally face General Radon on day 98 of this long journey. I descended into the Wailing Dunes to fight Star's Courage Radon in this vast land of Red Sea. There were these remains of the old champions everywhere with a glowing light to show their sacrifice during the battle. And General Radon was truly magnificent in size and power. He was everything I was expecting him to be. A true warrior ready to die for what he believed in. As the battle began, General Radon started shooting gravity arrows at me from the distance with a very precise aim that was extremely hard to dodge in time. And as I got close, he started shooting metal arrows from the sky to slow me down. But when we got even closer, I noticed that he was riding a tiny horse. This put me off guard, like how is this tiny horse carrying the weight of this Olympian fighter? Anyways, General Radon was very well trained in using his double curved swords. He was swinging using his magic and his gravity arrows all at the same time to make sure he didn't leave any opening for attacks. In the first few tries, I thought I was all alone, but soon I realized that I could summon all the champions into the battlefield. So the gatherings of the champions, including myself, teamed up in this grandiose battle to defeat this Olympian fighter. And remember when I point out that most enemies would leave an opening once they were occupied with others, but not this one, because he was able to stood his ground against all of us. So I started analyzing his movements, and I noticed that even he would put his guards down once he was overwhelmed by all these other fighters, and that I could inflict damage on him, but I would have to be ready to get hit too. So I marched towards him with my torrent and moved to his back and started attacking him. I couldn't believe my plan was working, but it was also taking a toll on my body because I couldn't attack him and block his attacks simultaneously. And after many tries, as the gatherings of the champions were able to defeat this great enemy of the Wailing Dunes, it was an honor to fight alongside these champions, but it was also a huge honor to battle a warrior of this caliber. So after the battle with General Radon, I traveled back to the Limegrave to descend into the Nokron Eternal City to begin Ronnie's quest. In this quest, I had to defeat the ancestral spirit to make Ronnie the queen. So after waking up the ancestral spirit, I was teleported into an underground battlefield to face this ancient beast. This was my first time battling an actual animal that I could recognize. It looked like Santa Claus reindeer, but still, it was a very enticing creature. The whole experience reminded me of the Shadow of Colossus, and I felt like killing this magical beast wasn't the right move. After the battle, I went back to the surface, and boom, I'm in Khalid again. There was these two giant golems who were waiting for me on the surface. They were the gods of the Great Jar. So I dropped them quickly and went straight for the big boss. Lo and behold, he just wanted to test my strength with his adversaries. So the first one was the Duelist Knight of the Great Jar. He was very fast with his movements and attacks because of his small weapon, but his attacks were weak and couldn't penetrate my armor, so I dropped him quickly. The second duelist was a samurai with an anime level accuracy and power. He was also wearing a good armor, so it took a couple of blows for me to drop him. And finally, the Hammer of God. He was very similar to me because of his heavy weapon and shield. And as expected, he was slow, but his attacks were insane, to the point that I had to keep my distance if I wanted to win. And I was expecting the Great Jar to jump in any minute, but he just stood there as if nothing happened, even though I was dropping his man left and right. And after the battle, the Great Jar gave me his arsenal arsenal, which dramatically increased my equipment load. Riding back to the Midwood Forest, I noticed broken pieces of land levitating in the sky and defying gravity. There, I caught up with Bladed, and he informed me of a trader that needed to be taken care of. So onwards to the Nokron city again. I was passing across the bridge, and suddenly I faced this Mimic Tier, a creature that morphs into the player. So basically, I was fighting myself, and I knew how to defeat me because, duh, I was a heavy hitter but slow. So I kept my distance from me and started attacking me without giving me a chance to move. I was also drinking tears to replenish my HP, and that wasn't a good sign because now the battle was dragging. At the end, I was able to defeat me because I was better than me. Duh! After crossing the bridge, I made my way to the Sofra Aqueduct under the water well, and lo and behold, the valiant Gargoyle twins. The worst part of this battle was that I didn't knew there was two of them, because the second one didn't show up until the end of the first battle, and now there was two flying cockroaches to bully me. Their heads were small, so I knew they were stupid, because there was no accuracy in their attacks, and they didn't even knew how to work as a team. The battle was frustrating because I had to deal with two stupid cockroaches, and there was no way to run because of their spicy farts. It not only burnt my eyes but also suffocated my holes all around, and now I had to maneuver the fight with my holes blocked. But soon I was able to disintegrate them into non-existence. Going back to the Lime Grave, it never occurred to me to visit the Stromville Castle after defeating Margaret. So it was a breeze going through all the places while decimating anything that moved. This whole castle reminded me of Dark Souls 3, and it was very nostalgic. As for the big boss, I was in for a treat. Behold, the Lord of all that's golden, Godric the Grafted. I must say, he was a very premium boss, and he was oozing with royalty. Very different from Margaret, as he was conservative with his attacks, but there was actually two parts to this battle. As soon as he chopped off his hand and shoved it into the dragon's head, I was screaming my lungs off, like how badass this Lord of Golden was. And the dragon was shooting fire out of its mouth, like what? Incredible enemy design and backstory. Shame I dropped him quickly than his girlfriend a few years ago. Okay, back to Ronnie's quest. I went to the Carrion study hall to collect something for Ronnie, which I don't remember, and it moved something in the study hall, but we will have to find out. Oh, the entire building is upside down. And I came across this elevator which took me straight to the bridge of the tower. And lo and behold, the flapping babushki was waiting for me. So after dealing with babushki, I went up to the tower to get the curse mark of the dead. I went back to Ronnie to give her the curse mark, but instead I found this portal which took me to the Insil Revel main, where Ronnie got in touch with me through a voodoo doll. There was also a fruit hanging in the middle of the ruins waiting for me. I mean the malformed star. Oh lord, this thing is much more terrifying than I remember, but I was able to insecticide it quickly. Soon I reached the land of Norcastella, where I made my way through the Eternal City and into the tunnels, where I met the evil ghost of Bladed. I was a competent warrior by now, but this guy had some personal grudge or something because he was actually trying to kill me. So I had to struggle before putting him down. From there I made my way to the Lake of Rot, literally the only thing that I hate the most in the entire game because of the trauma I suffered from battling the Exile Dragon. But I was able to get inside the Grand Cluster, where I slept inside a tomb, and the Lake of Rot dropped me 6 feet underground. And oh my, even my soul wasn't ready for what I was about to see. The moment I saw it, my eyes traveled to the galaxies and beyond. Lo and behold, the Astral Natural Bone of the Void, or you could call it the Daddy Star. A mesmerizing creature with beautiful pair of wings and a body that's made up of galaxies with a sharp tail. And where to begin with the face? A terrifying human skull with 2 sets of claws, ready to snatch you if you dare to get close. Like it would throw galaxy balls at me and would try to sting me with his sharp tail. If that wasn't enough, it would disappear in the void and would suddenly appear behind me and would grab me with his claws. And if that wasn't enough, it would literally manipulate the gravity to make me useless. It had so many tricks up its sleeve that I was ready to give up, because it had both close and long distance attacks with precision that was out of this world. So I had to get inside because I couldn't avoid his attacks, and with the help of my Crimson Tears and heavy attacks, I was able to send it back to the void. So afterwards, I went to the Academy of Rhea Lucaria. This was my first time visiting the academy, and I didn't know what to expect. And I was kindly greeted by these sorcerers. I was wondering where did they came from when we first met back in the Celia town of sorcery, and apparently this is their origin place. The academy was beautiful, very intellectual I must say. Books, papers, inks, libraries in every corner. The first boss I encountered was this red dog, which I had seen before, and it made me realize that I was supposed to visit this place in the beginning, not when I'm at level 9000, because everyone was weak, embarrassingly weak. The only thing that I couldn't stop was this rolling ball coming towards me down the stairs. When I reached the main library in the academy, I was greeted by the students of this kind lady called Renola, the queen of the full moon, but there was no resemblance between her and the moon. And the students were these crawling thirsty creeps who would bite me if I get too close. But I was able to crack the moon lady and dropped her back to our level. To my surprise, this wasn't even her final form. She took me to her void with a moon for background, hence why she was claiming to be the moon lady. She was no different from other sorcerers, but she could summon a ghost dragon to help her, which was pretty sick, but you know how it ends. So after the battle, I got the dark moon ring from one of the chests and traveled to the grand lift of the Dectos to ascend into the Altos Latos. There I met two giant golems and the hospitality was very good. They didn't even care about my presence until I tried to fight them myself. Afterwards, I traveled to the Woodfolk Ruins, the origin of the A3. I was minding my own business until I came face to face with a worm face. Yes, literally, a worm face was spitting poison at me every time I tried to get close. The disrespect, man. And I couldn't just let him go after such an heinous action, so I swept him off his feet. I was exploring as usual until I came across the windmill village. There, I met the celebrants. They were creepy as a flipping toaster. They were smiling, singing, and dancing, but ready to fight if someone attacked them. Moving on, I traveled to the Mount Gelmir, where I crossed the bridge towards the mountains. I accidentally came across the battlefield where each side was worse than the other. As I got close, I saw the most horrifying view ever. The trolls were tortured and hanged upside down for everyone to witness. I don't know why the trolls always get the short end of the stick. Anyways, climbing up the Mount Gelmir, I saw a bull-looking creature waiting, introducing the full-grown falling star beast, which had some similar features to the daddy star from the previous battle. And this was a very energetic battle. To my surprise, none of us had any long distance attacks. So it was the battle of the fists with raw power to see who will rise to the top. And of course, yours truly proved again who's the Alpha Giga Chat. Climbing down the mountain, I faced yet another boss, the ulcerated tree spirit. I can't put it to words, like, what is this creature? A lizard, a wingless dragon worm, a tree with legs, and it breathes fire. So I still cannot process this creature in my brain, but safe to say I flushed it down the toilet. And oh, this is the worm face I was talking about, but without the covering. Indeed, a very sick individual who needs love and compassion. So I exactly did that. Anyways, traveling back to the Altus Platus to the capital outskirts to get inside the royal capital. There was a tree sentinel guarding the gate, so you know what that means, right? Drop that bitch! So after dropping the tree sentinel, I made my way inside until I was able to see the royal capital, or as I call it, the Golden Castle. A very enthralling view with a perplexing architecture and a dead dragon laying on the castle to complement it. It was the biggest dragon I had ever came across, and as I looked up, I finally saw the Mother A3. It was so close yet so far away, and I couldn't wait to get inside it. So I slowly made my way down to the castle while admiring the architecture of this place. There I met these Gothic soldiers again, and these pesky soldiers always get on my nerves. On the ground, the beauty of this place was even more jaw-dropping. I traveled to every corner of this capital, from the top of the building to the main street and into the underground tunnels. As beautiful as it was, there wasn't much there except for teasing these low-level enemies, until the donkey lady came to me and told me that she was leaving somewhere and that I was supposed to become the Elden Lord. Like, what? I just wanted to see the Mother A3 up close, but you know what? I'll take the title of Elden Lord. As I was climbing over the dragon, I noticed how big this creature was up close. Inside the capital, I came across this abandoned building, which was the exact replica of the Table of Lost Grace, as if this was the original place of meeting. Anyways, I made my way through one of the watchtowers by climbing this huge tree trunk, and there I faced the Godfrog, the first Elden Elden Lord in all its shiny golden ghost body. This Elden Lord was oozing with alpha energy, but he was extremely slow and heavy, and I was able to put him down quickly. But I feel like this won't be the last time I will be facing him. From there, I made my way to the entrance, which led me straight to the Mother A3, and I wasn't surprised that I was gonna face another boss. But as I went inside, there were 6 council chairs with a big one in the middle, and suddenly I heard a familiar voice, and it was Margaret. What the? He's still alive? Behold, Morgoth, the Omen King. This was his actual identity. What in the Holy Mother of Kings? He's actually a king? His fighting style was just like before, close and long distance attacks with a new shiny sword. Somehow he was faster, sharper, hotter, and stronger. So that wasn't even his final form when we first battled. And in the middle of the fight, he started to show some sort of weakness, but I couldn't put my finger to what was actually wrong with him. During the battle, he was evolving, and I noticed he wasn't just a boss or a king. He was actually a demigod. Like, how cool is this character? After the fight, I was gonna walk away, but I noticed his actual body. It was weak, old, and rusted. This was his actual form after living for thousands of years. He warned me that the Mother A3 won't let me to get inside. I tried to get close, but the thorns refuse all. So I went back to the side of Grace, and the donkey lady came to me. Her name is Melina, apparently. She told me that for me, in order to become the Elden Lord, I have to face the Elden Ring. She wanted me to travel to another place to get some sort of flames and burn the thorns to get inside. What? I'm so close yet so far away. So after defeating Morgoth, the Omen King, now I could travel to the capital outskirts in search of the mysterious flames to burn the thorns. While crossing the bridge towards the Forbidden Land, I was suddenly hypnotized by these 2 failed twins. I'm not sure what was their purpose for existence. I mean, they were chubby, stupid, lazy bums who were just there to waste my time. I literally dropped one of the twins in front of the other, but the other twin just stood there and watching. Like, what is going on? But soon I was able to send the twins back to their mother's womb. Anyways, after getting Morgoth's great runes from the Divine Tower of the East Altars, I went to the Grand Left-Off Road to ascend into the Forbidden Lands. Lo and behold, it was snowing. This was my first time seeing snow in this world, and it was chilling. The first enemy I encountered in this frozen land was the sassy melodic performer who was blowing ice from her mouth. She was moving with such elegance, and her attacks were so graceful. Every swing had a purpose, and every spin had a melodic tune to it. And I didn't realize how dangerous she was because I was blinded by her performance. It pained me to depart from her, but I had to move on. As I was moving from Zamir ruins to the mountaintop of the giants, I saw the fire monks guarding the bridge. But this time, instead of the daddy monk, they had their fire babushki helping them. The babushki had this long web that she would pull out every time I would get close. Hey, I'm not calling names or anything, but she was the one whooping my cheeks. Anyways, after dealing with fire babushki, I realized how incredibly the bridge was laid out. It was made up of these beautifully crafted stones put together in a line to make way for the visitors to the land of the giants. And guess who was there to welcome me in the land of the giants? A giant frozen golem. So I had to pay my respect. As I traveled further in the land of the giants, I realized this was actually the land of the golems, because there were dead golems in every corner of the snowy mountain. And there were 2 things that stood out to me the most. First, the elevation of this map was twice as high as other places in the game. And second, architectures were huge. And the bridges in this land was as big as the castles in other parts of the map. Moving on, as I was fighting these giant skeletons in the graveyard, I finally encountered the first boss fight in the land of the giants. Behold, the death-right bird with his dark flame. He seemed weak and malnourished at first until he handed my cheeks back to me. So anyways, this dark flame bird was average at best in design, size, and power, but he had something that made him stand out among the rest, and that was his dark flame. He could control his dark flames at will, which was a very unique characteristic, and that's why he was able to do close and long distance attacks. Giving his agile body and flying ability, he was the perfect recipe to annoy a player. But soon I was able to ship him to the North Pole as a Thanksgiving turkey. Anyways, traveling through the frozen land, I came across the Flame Peak, which was the land of the frozen trolls. Literally 1 in every 2 trolls were frozen in the land, but I was able to find a few living trolls. I really liked the design of these creatures. They had their basic shape, but with white fur to complement the cold environment. As I kept climbing the Flame Peak, peak, I finally came face to face with a fire giant, a giant ginger human with another face for belly. He was also carrying a food tray as a weapon. I didn't realize how brobdignagian this giant was until I reached its foot. His entire foot was twice as big as my body. His attacks were devastating because of his sheer size, but at the same time I was able to move through his legs because of how small I was compared to his body. It was all fun and games until he started stepping on me and would roll his entire body to crush me. And if I got away, he would throw snow at me using his food tray. Or even worse, he would throw fireballs that would explode on impact. But of course, slamming the food tray on my head was never fun. I could only reach his foot, so I targeted his ankles until it dislocated. But he just snapped his leg off for some reason. And suddenly, the face on his belly woke up. And now it was the battle of the flames. But because of his leg being snapped off, his movements were severely impacted. And I took that chance to finally melt him to the ground. From there, I made my way to the Forge of the Giants. And Melina came to me while I was resting at the side of grace. She told me that this world was in a dire need of repair, and that if I was ready to commit a cardinal sin. I mean, I just wanted to become the Elden Lord, but you know what? Let's do it. Hold on a sec. She used me to get to the Forge of the Giants, and using the flame of the forge, she burned down the entire Mother A3. Wait, I thought we were only burning down the thorns, not the entire Mother A3. What in the Holy Mother of Flames is going on here? And suddenly, I was teleported to the crumbling Forum Azula, or as I call it, the Windy Castle. This was the most stupendous place ever. Broken pieces of castle levitating in the sky in the midst of these tornadoes, and all the dragons flying around in chaos. As I went inside the castle, I realized that I had to climb down this broken architecture to get to the main boss. There wasn't much activity in this part of the map except for finding my way. Even the creatures were nothing to be excited about. But I liked the design of the map though, because there was more than one way of getting down this castle, and it was really fun. And soon I came across this ancient dragon, stone body with golden wings and red electrical thunder lighting. The battle was exciting, but there was nothing new because I had faced similar creature in the underworld before. And to my disappointment, this wasn't even a big boss, but rather just another dragon. And finally, I was able to get to the big boss. And lo and behold, the beast clergyman. Oh, this is the guy I met back in Caelid before fighting General Radon. He seemed like a sensei from a Japanese anime with a lot of wisdom in his movements. He was trying to be humble with his dressing, but his actions proved otherwise. He was honestly the most dynamic boss I had came across. I could tell from his movements that he was a very experienced fighter. He was holding a kunai knife as a weapon, and during the battle, he finally had enough of me and broke his philosopher's stone and released its power and pulled out the black blade and finally revealed his actual identity. Behold, Malekith the Black Blade. He had the most badass looking armor with black suit, golden stripes and white wavy hair. He transformed into something entirely different in regards to his movements and fighting style. No longer was he humble during the battle, but rather all out with his black blade and red flames. These red flames are something to be desired. Let's just say I was burning the entire fight, and his black blade was not kind neither to me nor my body. Not once did he take a breath during the battle, and he really despised me. But soon I was able to put an end to his tyranny. After the battle, I saw the Mother A3 ignited in flames, burning for everyone to witness. And boom, I was teleported to the Lindell Ashen capital. The entire castle was drowned in the ashes of the A3, and it was devastating. I just wanted to become the Elden Lord, but at what cost? Anyways, I climbed my way to the capital tower, and I was greeted by Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, and he didn't want me to become the Elden Lord on behalf of Queen Marika. Though his looks were deceiving, but not his knowledge of the magic. He was well informed with every kind of magic that was in this world, from the crystal arrows to the black flames and the circle desks and much more. But his magic was nothing compared to my raw strength, and I was able to put him down for good. And his final words were that a tarnished cannot become a lord, a man cannot kill a god. Wow, that was deep. And finally, I made my way to the entrance of the burning Mother A3, and oh my, Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, was saying his goodbyes to Morgoth. He actually returned to defend his title to a mere human, but I was excited to finally battle him in his actual form. Godfrey was much more forgiving, or at least for now, compared to the Black Blade, but that doesn't mean he wasn't brutal or not worthy of the title of Elden Lord. Mind you, he was fighting me with his raw strength, heavy axe and nothing more. No magic, no gimmick whatsoever, and that was command commendable. But he had a companion called Serosh, and during the fight he ripped it off his body to release the weight, and now he was fighting with full strength. Okay, so now he wasn't forgiving. He was fighting me with full strength by tackling me and wrestling me to the ground, and his impacts were devastating to say the least. I have never been slapped this hard by anyone. His movements were animalistic, and now he was acting more like Serosh, jumping, snatching, and using his claws to tear the atoms from my body. But soon I was able to defeat Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, fair and square, and he finally acknowledged my strength before departing away. And finally I made my way to the inside of the Mother A3, where the thorns were burning in red flames. Lo and behold, the Queen Marika was Jesus in the mid-air. But suddenly half of the ring broke, and Radon of the Golden Order rose to the battlefield. The Golden Order had half of his body disintegrated and hollow in the middle, where I could see the great runes powering his body. He was carrying his golden hammer to punish anyone who would dare to challenge him, and he dropped me quicker than I could blink. This Golden Order was manipulating lightning thunder at will to break me from the core. He was so calm yet so devastated. I died many times in order to figure out what was the deal with this guy. Even with my trusty knight Invale, we couldn't even make him twitch. But I remembered the words of Sir Gideon that a man cannot defeat a god. So I had to do it not because I could, but because it was necessary. And finally I was able to drop the Golden Order to his knees. But suddenly the Elden Beast came out of its body and devoured it. Lo and behold, the Titanosaurus looking flappy universe. And the battle just carried on as if nothing happened. But I was on the verge of collapse. We were in water with endless Mother A3 surrounding us in succession. The beast could shoot fire out of its mouth and had this long golden blade to complement its outwardly structure. The beast was very magical to say the least, and was moving with such grace in the battlefield that I couldn't help but admire it. The beast was cataclysmic with his attack. Every attack would shake my atoms to the core. And during the battle, the beast started to fly using his flappy wings, and I knew I was in trouble. It created a ring of light in the sky and replicated on the ground just to tear me into pieces. Bruh, it just grabbed me with his hands and Jesus me in the air while piercing my body with lightning rods. What in the holy mother of cross is this punishment? Every attack was different from before. This was the most unpredictable battle, as if he knew my moves beforehand. It took a while for me to get a grasp of what's happening, but soon I, the Tarnished, a man, was able to defeat the Elden Beast. And to my disappointment, the Knight Inval had the final strike on the beast. What? Come on, man! Okay, by this point my brain was fried. Like, what just happened? So after the battle, Rani the Queen appeared and started blabbering something about chill nights and the reaching age of the moon or something. But I didn't get any of it, and the game just ended with me holding the witch's hand. Anyways, soldiers of Gothric, if you want me to make more Elden Ring videos, make sure to subscribe. And farewell, Tarnishes.